So today, my intent is to spark some discussion around and how we integrate feed cost and peak value and to our as a producer. One of my main goals is to maximize profitability. So I'll start just giving some background information, trying to set the stage for the nutrition, our nutrition programs during chaotic markets. I'll go into some aspects on the economics of nutrition programs, and then going into dynamic marginal profit. And I'll use two case studies to go through the economics of the nutrition programs, and then touching on the importance of population responses and how we capture those responses to improve our prediction of profitability. But before I go further, I wanted to just show this is a very special picture. It shows key of my mentors during my graduate work, and even after that. This is an amazing team of scientists and researchers that not only gave me the foundations for nutrition and research, but also gave excellent examples and as people and showing me really on the right balance in life and put priorities, which it has been God at the center of the life, family being very important, and in the work do the best you can. So I owe so much to these three individuals and so many more that make NC State a very nice family that I'm honored to address today. Dr. Dean, one of favorite notes for Dr. Dean will be discovery, seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought, and that has just resonated in my life. And I think what we've done at NC State with this team has been great work. So appreciate it. And through that collaboration with NC State, I was able to work with Hanor early in my graduate work. This is a very amazing company, a leading company in the country, and very progressive and innovative. And that's what I think it made our graduate work to begin with very special in accessing commercial information in their research facilities, the state-of-the-art research facilities. And then working through the data to understand better our nutrition programs. So I joined Hanor back in 2014. So it's about to be 7 years. Hanor is an integrated company. It was established in 1996, and it owns today 2 processing plants: Triumph Foods, STF Foods, and then further processing with Deli's Premium Meats and Peterson Natural Farms. So this is just a small diagram of the company, and then that's a picture of where we are located. So it is very diverse in nature. We have a main office here in Oklahoma. That's where I am based, and I oversee the technical aspects of the company, which include nutrition, research, system improvements, and so basically is providing any technical support to production. And in all honesty, I inherited a great program from Dr. Dean Boyd, who has been very keen to leading the company to be a database company, being a research-based data company where research information is used for business decisions, and that be part of what I have today to present. So just to get this started, wanted to frame this picture. The word chaos has been one of the most used words, especially during last year, and it's been a special year, special season, very intriguing, very interesting. But digging through the data, I came to see that it wasn't only last year, that our industry has faced different moments where our work has become a chaos. And as practical nutritionists, we have to manage our nutrition programs during those seasons, during a very dynamic market. And that's just reality. So I'll get started with peak prices, which is a key driver of our profitability, obviously. And this is just showing a USDA carcass, pork carcass cutout information for the last 9 years. And just to illustrate the point on how variable, how dynamic our market is, and no too predictable in a way. As of May 5, 2021, our carcass cutout was 112, which is great for our season, and especially coming after periods of time where that was in a negative profitability par. So it's good to see those numbers, but yet I guess the point is we live in a world of chaos. And along with that is our feed costs. So I'm presenting you here a graph of ingredient prices on corn price, soybean price, and soybean oil. It's a representation of fat or lipid for the last 10 years. And just to picture or illustrate how variable and how unpredictable our market has become. We're coming into a season where, even though our peak price is very good, our feed costs, it has increased drastically, and then it put us in a bad position and not knowing what to expect next. But I guess that's what it makes our industry so amazing, is being resilient to these events in the past, and I'm sure we will overcome any new challenges in the future. But going into the presentation, I'm just hoping to provide you tools that help you manage your nutrition programs during these seasons. So taking data from the Iowa State University estimated livestock returns, there's a really good model to follow. And it's just, I guess, to make the case on or where the costs for the production of pigs are being driven by. So here I'm presenting in the way that Iowa State has broken down the costs of feed, the WIMP costs, variable costs, operating and fixed costs. And in times where our costs were really high on production, it's been mainly driven by the feed costs. And the WIMP costs, which in great part will be a representation of that feed cost again. The work we do as nutritionists in every company is very important, as it will be a driver not only of the cost, but profitability. So taking the same model, but just showing all the pieces for profitability, so including total costs, sales value, and then at the top, your profitability for the last 10 years. This is an excellent model to track what's going on in the market, but also I wanted to make the point here that during the last 5 years, especially, there's been many instances where profitability based on the model, on the Iowa State University model, has been negative. We're coming into a season where it's been positive and just being challenged by feed costs and the uncertainty of the price of corn. This chart shows you, this is a complexity by value matrix. And I'm not an economist, but I did have to work by the hand of Dr. Dimboy and the Hanor team into understanding and how to use these different matrices in our way to represent the feed costs as a way to understand information from our pigs and a way to establish policies in our nutrition programs. So this is showing the evolution of the economics of feed costs in that matrix, starting with just accrued feed costs, which is the dollars per pound or dollars per ton basis, which it is a good matrix, a good variable. If you're just comparing two diets that you know they will have the same performance, but they are just different in the feed cost invoice. This is only to look it up. I guess as the level of sophistication increases, we become very in predicting profitability, which is ultimately the main goal as nutritionists. Next is in that level of sophistication is the feed cost of gain, expressed as the dollars spent in feed per pound of gain. This is a good variable to measure and to use, but mainly when you know there will be feed efficiency differences, but you don't expect to have a crop performance difference. Income over feed costs is a variable that takes in account the revenue generated by number of pigs and the weight of the pigs, and relating that to the feed costs. So it expresses what is your marginal profit or income per pig when you put feed costs in the equation. And you can add not only feed costs, but you can add space costs. We like to add medication costs when we know there's differences in treatment of pigs, and so on. So this is ultimately, it has become a gold standard for us to measure our nutrition programs or to value feed additives or nutrients as we establish policies. But as the topic of today, it relates to a dynamic market. In the two cases that I'm going to present in the next slides, I just wish to spark some discussions around why it's important to understand our work to be dynamic, knowing that our pig price and our feed costs will be changing over time and in a way not being very predictable. This is where I believe we have to evolve, is to use our profitability and understand our systems by our systems that are dynamic. So this will put the performance responses. We use the performance responses of pigs, and then we put into a financial model that then is driven into a simulation of different scenarios for a sensitivity analysis. So this is the first. I'll just use these next two memos or studies we conducted internally as examples on the economics of the feed costs. This one is talking about the economic value of lipids, which is a very important question as a driver of energy level into our diets. This was conducted only in late nursery diets. So for the nursery 4 phase, our nursery 4 phase that goes from 25 to 60 pounds, it was conducted in our research unit in Illinois, with 2,156 pigs, weighing about 27.5 pounds when they started, housing in 97 pens, using dependent experimental units and having 18 to 20 pens per treatment. Because of the research capabilities, we were able to block the pigs by gender and weight, and using those as blocks. And then going into the experimental design, we apply a stepwise increase of added lipid using choy white grease as the lipid source, and increments of 1% from 1 to 5%. Our diets were corn, soybean meal based diets with DDGs, and the standardized ileal digestible lysine to calorie ratio was held constant across treatments. So we manufactured the two basal diets with 1% and 5% and blended the intermediary levels by an automatic feed system at the research site. So this will be the results, the response of the pigs to our experiment. This was only conducted for one period, so 26 days, and what we, as expected, what we saw on the pigs happening was a response in feed conversion, improving feed conversion as the level of lipid was increasing the diet. There wasn't an impact for that short period of time on added lipid on the gain, on the body weight gain of pigs. There was some numerical difference when we analyzed for a quadratic response, and this is not correct. This should be 0.20. Apologize. So there was a numerical difference, but it wasn't strong to be detected as to be significant and to put into our model. And just letting out, because it was a intriguing response that we have to follow up, is perhaps that we didn't balance other nutrients than amino acids to the energy level of the diet, that didn't allow pigs with higher energy levels to grow more. So as we obtain the results, for us it's very important to detect or to describe the responses either by a linear or quadratic responses, and those are the ones that are fed to our financial model. In this case, only feed conversion was detected to be different, so final weight was calculated to be equal, as I expressed before. Didn't give any value to gain because it wasn't statistically different. And then our mortality and calls, it wasn't a difference that we could detect either for that period of time. So the linear response is represented in this graph for feed conversion. And I think what is important to us and is the equation that describes that response, because it's actually that mathematical expression, the one that is used into the model. So putting all the pieces together, we'll say that we like to express those responses mathematically because they are fed to the model. And it's ultimately when we put together the feed costs, the animal response, and then some variations into our market that give us a good idea on what is the most economical answer for our nutrition programs. This is where all is integrated and to define what is the best response. So in this scenario, I'm using $80 per hundredweight hog price and just the nursery diet costs at the time, with the increasing cost by adding the lipid into the diet. And in this model alone, increasing level of lipid to a nursery 4 diet reduce profitability when expressed by dollars per pig. And that was almost linear decrease. But we're talking about a chaotic market, a chaotic world. And in such, we need to make sense of those scenarios. And that's why we need to take a step further in understanding what is the financial response, but in different scenarios. So in this case, I'm using the extreme values for corn price, and it's expressed as dollar per pound, and extreme values for pig price, expressed as 100 weight. And then by putting the model together, using the mathematical expressions of the animal performance, using the diet cost, which is going to be in relation to corn price in this case, and using our revenue that is dependent on the pig price and the value created with the diet. We are able then to simulate different scenarios that will make sense, better sense for a dynamic work. And I know that picture was and didn't intend you to go through those numbers. I'll have a couple of slides showing the key analysis, but it's just to illustrate in a way how that sensitivity analysis was applied to our system. So in the first graph in the left, I'm showing the relationship of diet costs, which comes increasing with the increasing level of added lipid and with decreasing corn price in relation to the marginal profit when we account for feed costs, space costs, and other variable costs. So overall, what the model shows us is that at any level of the lipid, additional lipid, a increasing level of increasing added lipid was economical for our system, but we need to go farther than that. Correct. So it's the same response I'm showing in the graph in the right, and this one is showing the marginal profit by corn price, which will be a key predictor for diet costs, and then the colors in the bars show you the different dietary treatments, which is the increasing levels of lipids in the diet. So, and I think here is much easier to illustrate in this graph that in low feed costs and low corn price scenarios, as we get close to a 4% added lipid, that seemed to go back to the profit obtained with 1% lipid. And that is in relation to the response on feed conversion we had. But it's interesting that as we go into higher prices, higher corn prices, the difference, the gap become bigger, and it's no longer economical to use added lipid into those diets. So now, and I came to learn about this ratio as I walking through the door of Hanoi. We need to provide this kind of tools to the purchasing team because they are in a daily basis trying to obtain the best ingredients for your program, and they need to know and understand easy ways to know a price seems to be good for our program. So the corn to the oil to corn price ratio is a very intriguing, very interesting one for us. So in the graph in the top, I'm showing the soybean oil price during the last 20 years in relation to the corn price over the same period of time. And then in the graph below, I'm comparing the two and calculating the ratio of those two prices. In average, the soybean oil to corn price was about 5 times that price of corn. And there has been instances where that ratio is 4, but also where it's been 6. And so I'll be showing in the next slide and why this is important as an easy way to know oil becomes economical into our diets. But just wanted to illustrate that there's very few instances where that ratio is where we like to see, which is around 3. Now, this is the price of soybean oil. In our programs will include not only soybean oil, but tallow, choy white grease, and is perhaps we have lower prices and the ratios would be lower with those. But I just had a good access to good history data on soybean oil and corn oil and corn, and wanted to compare the two for illustration purposes. So when I compare the lipid to corn price in the x-axis to the marginal profitability in the y-axis, then it starts to make sense at what level, at what price of lipid in relation to corn, the lipid becomes economical into our diet. The value created for this study especially was in feed conversion, so the efficiency of that feed utilization. And it seems that overall, when my 4% diet was less than 3 or 3.2 ratio in the lipid to corn price ratio, it will become economical into my diet. And that's why this ratio is important. As a rule of thumb, we'll say that about 3 times when the price of lipid is 3 times or less than the price of corn, is economical to use into our diets. Now I'm breaking down these in the different corn price scenarios. So again, in the x-axis, I'm showing the lipid to corn price ratio, but only dividing by the corn price scenario. So going from low diet cost to high diet cost. And then expressing again, it's my main response being the marginal profitability. And as you can see here, it's very interesting that as the corn price is low, 0.06 cents per pound, my ratio, I want to use fat when it becomes 4.5. But when the price of corn or diet cost increases to a high level, if the lipid to corn price is no less than 3 times, I won't use it. So this just gives you an idea on that sensitivity analysis that we have to be aware as we design our programs. I guess as a one last slide on this first study, I wanted to compare the economics of feed costs, those variables that help us to understand the economics of our programs. That included feed costs, the crude feed costs, and feed costs of gain, and the marginal profitability or the income over feed cost. I'm comparing the 3 using this example, this study as an example, and comparing the 5 treatments for each of those economic variables. And then I'm expressing the feed costs based on the corn price. It's in relation to the corn price. And everything here is related to 1% added lipid when the corn was 0.06. So the matrix is showing you a difference in relation to that scenario. So as an example, treatment 2, so 2% added lipid. When the price, when the corn price was 0.06, there was an increase in $7.80 per ton, and so on. So when we added 5% added lipid, we increased our diet to $19.5 when the corn is 0.06. When the corn is 0.20, and next trimester scenario, we increase our diet cost by $155. So now, again, and I think we talked about earlier about the feed costs as a crude feed cost and how we use it. We won't be able to compare these 2, 3, 5 treatments in relation to 1% lipid because the performance of those peaks were different. So then our feed cost of gain becomes a better predictor. So again here, everything is in relation to that 1% lipid and the low corn price scenario. So as we go to the different added lipid levels, my feed cost of gain says that I didn't increase or reduce the feed cost per pound of gain under the scenario 0.06 for the price of corn. This is different though when we increase the diet costs. In relation to 1% lipid, I increase by $0.1 when I increase 1% lipid, and so on. Now, I think that's why it's important then to go one step further and integrate the animal response, the pig price into the revenue, and the diet cost into the feed costs, and integrate it into the income over the feed costs or the marginal profitability. So again, here everything is comparing to the 1% added lipid and 0.06 corn price. And as you can see here, this is a more sensitive analysis. It's showing us that even into the low corn prices scenario, there was a difference in the profitability. But then that difference was, so I might want to use some of this if this was positive, some of the added lipid. Now, if I increase the price, the corn price to 0.20 cents, to 0.20 cents, then I see that the response to added lipid is even increasing in reducing the profitability per PX. So a more sensitive analysis is just taking one step further and relating that analysis to different scenarios of diet costs and pig price. I think that take us closer to predict our profitability in our systems. So my second example here is the determination of lysine adequacy on a population basis for growing pigs. So this study was presented in the Midwest meeting in 2016, and I just updated and integrated the principles that I'm providing today for this study. So when we are looking for a specification for lysine for population of growing pigs, we start by defining the dose response to lysine in each of the dietary phases. After that, we assemble the estimates of each growing phase into what we call a lifetime standard lysine curve. Once we have defined this standard curve, we need to challenge over time. So we would like to do every 8 years, every 10 years, because the response of the pigs will be changing. It's likely, but it will be changing. So in this study, we challenge our standard curve, which is 100%, with extremes, with 110 and 98, 92%. But then ultimately, and for the purpose of this presentation, this has to be integrated. The response of those of the animals to the increasing level of or increasing lysine curves have to be integrated into a dynamic financial model, and that's what ultimately will define an optimum lysine curve. So this study was conducted in our commercial research facilities using 2,048 gills and barrels. The trial started from about 49 pounds all the way to 300 pounds. All the pigs were, they had a constant endpoint at 138 days of feed. They were housed in 65 pens. And then we took subsampling of their crude carcass and the carcass primals. The pigs were allowed to 4 dietary treatments, as I expressed earlier, 92, 98, 104, and 110% of the standard lysine curve. So these were our dietary treatments here. Diets were corn, soybean meal based with 15% DDGs and 2.7% soy white grease. And then we manufactured the extreme diets and blended the intermediary using the computerized feed system. So here, just presenting the diet phases that we use into our study. And for the different lysine curves. And so going into the the results here. This is showing the body weight or whole body weight response. The growth rate was found to be quadratic. We found a quadratic response for those, and that was pretty consistent across all phases when we challenged our Lysine curve to the extremes. And so they seem to maximize growth at around 98%. Feed efficiency, we found a linear response, which was very interesting. So pigs improved their gain to feed ratio when lysine was higher. Then going into carcass growth, it was a true reflection of what happened with the whole body. And the gain to feed ratio was a linear response as well. So, and I think the other part I wanted to point it out in this presentation is on how we describe the population response to those diets. I think this is key in fitting to the financial model, because ultimately the other part of the equation, along with the gain, is the number of pigs that go into the plan. So for us, the full value pig metric is a very important one. As we conduct different studies, that's a piece of information that will be key. That and morbidity analysis, and the number of pigs that have been treated. So any medication usage is important. For this study, we found that the substandard pigs decrease or were optimized at around 104%. And we found that quadratic response here. So it was a very interesting, intriguing variable to find, but very good to measure, because that ultimately impacts the full value pig. So defining those responses, as I said in the first study, we like to describe the responses mathematically and use those mathematic expressions into our financial model. So these are two examples for the full value pigs and the substandard pigs in the way we use that description of the response. So here, going a little farther into the financial analysis to make sense on the data and then to find an optimal level of our Lysine curve. The mathematical expression of the key responses are presented here in the left. And that is what then, because we found linear and quadratic responses, that is what estimates the key variables for the model as the final body weight, full value pigs, carcass weight, population of pigs that didn't get to the market, so your substandard pigs and their body weight, and so on. So here, just illustrating on how we integrate that information to a financial analysis, very similar to the first study, and trying to integrate everything to a marginal profit that is expressed in dollars per pig. But then we have to feed this into a sensitive analysis, again, taking that next step to make sense of our chaotic work. Overall, when we feed all the information to the model and run the different scenarios for pig price and feed costs, this is the Lysine curve, the economical Lysine curve described by our model. So when integrating the response of feed conversion and the response to growth rate and response to the full value pig, our model will say that around 101, 102% of our 100% curve is where it was more optimal to set the Lysine curve at. But then we have to understand the different scenarios just to know what to do in the different market conditions. So in this graph, I'm showing in the different colors the diet cost. So increasing diet cost will be a darker blue. And then the different blocks of peak price. So this will be $60 per hundredweight to $120 per hundredweight, and everything related to a marginal profitability. Obviously, when the price peaks is low, so less than 80, about less than 80, some scenarios will be in a negative profitability. But then what it was very interesting in doing this sensitivity analysis, it was that at any peak price, there was the curve for lysine was quite similar. So getting to an optimal level of about from 99 to 102%, depending on the conditions, was seen in every scenario. So, and as last step, I'm taking you again to the economics of the feed cost, comparing the crude diet costs, the feed cost of gain, and the marginal profitability for this exercise, varying by the peak price from $60 to $100 per hundredweight, and the colors within the chart indicates your marginal profitability. When it's red, be a negative profitability. And then what we describe as the Lysine curve from 90 to 100% to find our optimal level. So again, I guess when you're trying to compare the different diet costs for the different scenarios, and this will tell you that in relation to 90% lysine curve, as you add lysine